Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Nancy. Thank you very much for inviting me here. Great.
Oh,
We've reached out on LinkedIn.
I am so excited to have you on the program. And first of all, let's start with where you're located.
Well, I'm located in Cheshire in the United Kingdom. It's the northwest of England.
Okay. And then my next question, of course, is how did you come to veganism?
I can remember the day, literally. Um, I was 50 and I'd recently moved to a more rural area, and I would travel home and I'd find rabbits that had been knocked over by cars on the road. My husband and I, he's as soft as I am, we'd stop the car, and if they're not too badly damaged, we'd move them to the grass verge. I'd put flowers there. I'd even cry. So I always thought of myself as an animal lover, and I've got lots of rescue animals and everything. And then I got home, wiped the tear after a bunny funeral, opened the fridge door, the light shone down onto some chicken fillets ready for that night. It was going to be a curry, actually. And I thought, what the heck am I doing? It was, a road to Damascus moment of this is inconsistent with my beliefs, my values. How come I can cry, but I can kill and eat flesh of another animal? That species sort of thinking. So yeah, so that was the start. I went vegetarian that day, and then when I learned more about the dairy industry and the fishing industry, about 2 months later, that was it. That
Wow,
was vegan.
it's so like it's like in a movie, right? There was a spotlight on the chicken all of a sudden.
Yeah,
It's
literally a light bulb moment, and a light bulb on the chicken coincided. Like, oh, hold on a minute. There's some inconsistency here.
the
You know,
universe talking to you.
yeah. It was like, and there must have been seeds planted somewhere. I remember then thinking about, I had a neighbor that was vegetarian, and she said, how can you eat animals when you love them? And I, you know, we have to. And, because I was brought up in a Catholic family, eating meat in schools, normal, natural, necessary. In fact, it's almost part of your religious duty, the lamb, the roast dinners on a Sunday, turkey at Christmas, this, and you don't think of your parents leading you or your school, but, if there was something wrong with it, they would have told you, surely, or gave you the opportunity to critically think about the moral status of animals. But that didn't happen until much later. So
It's
50
crazy.
years
It's
blind.
crazy. It's crazy
Yeah.
how society can manipulate you into believing things that are not necessarily true.
Yeah.
So tell me, what first awakened you to your passion for humane education and the idea that empathy should be central on how we teach children?
I think as a person, I've always sort of seen myself as a rescuer. And I was always interested in human rights. I was nursing, and then when I became a lawyer, I became a prosecutor because I didn't want to it wasn't about the money, it was finding justice for people. Equally, if a defendant is innocent, to be able to say, or there isn't the evidence there, to be a check and balance in the system. But that awakening to animal suffering is the reason I was born. It became a vocation that I thought, that interconnection. I always wondered what the truth was in this world, and I suddenly saw how social injustice for human and non-human animals is so interconnected that you cannot look at one without the other. It's not a case of trying to deal with one so animal rights come below human rights and everything else, because if you don't look at them collectively, you don't find a solution for that peace and compassion that we all should be living towards. So as a lawyer, I thought, okay, I know I've been looking at criminal law and everything else. How can I look at law to help animals and people like vegans? And so that was when I worked for several NGOs offering sort of advice, lay advice. Obviously, it's not my area of expertise, but I started to delve into the Human Rights Act for vegans, for example. And under the Equality Act in the UK, veganism is a recognised philosophical belief. So it has cogency and weight, and there's rights that flow from that. And I think working for this organisations that were looking at stopping the slaughter of animals that are raised in school grounds, I suddenly thought, well, what is on the curriculum? Has it changed since my day, which is a long time ago? So, and I looked and I was horrified. The moral status of animals, empathy, very selective, kind of love the dog, be kind, but nothing that went to the heart of our compassion, that wasn't actually just entrenching animals as, certainly farmed animals, as property. I mean, even in law, animals are property. And yet in lived experience, and especially for children, there seems to be this natural empathy for animals. If there's a bird with a broken wing or a lost dog, but it is actually socialized out of them. And education, I could see, looking at the curriculum and how animals became objectified, that there wasn't that broad and balanced curriculum on animal ethics within the curriculum. So I sort of thought, what can I do to try and bring that? Because at the end of the day, a lot of the curriculum as well is driven by the animal agriculture and government, the 4-H programs, everything else. They're all, drink milk. It's good for you, even if the science doesn't say it. There's all the funding, the backing, the educational merits. Yeah. Of raising animals, so you know where your food comes from, without questioning.
Right.
Why love the dog and not the pig.
It's funny how they know how to make the words sound so you hear them and you think, that's reasonable. But tell me, how did the experience with the parent challenging the pig raising project shape the creation of your Vine program and your broader mission?
I saw in a way the helplessness of it. I also saw the polarity. Quite often you'd get this school, and there's more than one. There's about 112 school farms in the UK. Mm-hmm. And actually, when it comes into the news and say some parents have objected, and there's normally some kind of vegetarian or vegan parent that said, my child's come home, he's upset because the animals you're raising are going to go to slaughter. You'd get this polarity, and then the newspapers would get hold of it. And then what happened was people would end up entrenched in different positions. So the school would feel protective because they're not educated to their own discrimination, their own indoctrination of children into the carnist way of living. So they're equally not to be, and sometimes in a way, blamed. They're thinking they're doing a great thing. It's the norm. The children eat meat at school. They go home. What's the problem? And in that polarity of views, they become entrenched. One becomes defensive. And I thought, really, I'd like to come in the middle and try and be able to open discussion about, for example, the benefits, if you are going to keep animals on the school premises, to actually keep them for their life, so long as you've got a good environment for them and everything else. I'm not advocating for animals in schools, but I thought, if you're going to have a school farm, why don't you just do it to understand, yes, that's where meat comes from, but also for the curricular subjects, their welfare, their natural lifespan. Most children don't know that, an animal can live to 30, but a pig will be killed at the age of 6 months. They're children, the animals. So, and also for children's well-being. They advocate how these school farms are so fantastic. Truancy is down, the mental health issues are better because they're connected with animals. Oh, and then you slaughter them. So if there is going to be those kind of grounding, emotional support for children, then there's a plethora of things these animals can do without you just having to raise them to show that they're going to be on your dinner plate. And some of them actually do that. They raise the children and it appears on the school canteen plate. And for me also, what was for those children who don't even have to be vegan but are sensitive to animals, the trauma they must have to go through. And it's not as if, well, you don't have to get involved. I've spoken to several schools that they don't have to get involved if they don't want to. They don't have to get involved with looking after these animals. The thing is, they embed them in the curriculum. They look in maths or English or science about how much have they grown? How much did we have to feed them to get them to slaughter weight? So you don't escape it. Plus, even if you don't look, they're there. It's happening. So I spoke to a couple of schools, and in the end, coming from an educational perspective, not carrying a banner of vegan and it's wrong and it's everything else, to actually just open up conversations to the inclusion of looking at alternative ways of our animals, because it's not just for the animals themselves, it's also about the environment. If we are going to live more sustainably, the science, the Eat Lancet report, everything, every piece of research that's credible will say we need to move to a plant-based diet. But yet, even in England, it's still regulated that the children have to eat meat at least 3 or 4 times, at least 3 times in England a week. One day must be fish, one day must be this. And you're sort of thinking, well, hold on a minute, this greenwashing of promoting, sorry, see, I'm on a roll now. Just go stop. But this crack on. This kind of focus on supporting the animal agriculture industry, when it flies in the face of your climate policies, when it flies in your case of humane education or developing empathy in children, which is a valuable skill, which you advertise as a valuable skill, all of a sudden, it's not even in the hidden curriculum sometimes, it's in the actual curriculum that you get this kind of specious thinking. And so, yes, that was my journey. And so looking at the law, I thought, right, in England and Wales, religious education isn't drawn up by the government. It's drawn up by what's called standing advisory councils. And you don't have to have a religious, it can be a non-religious worldview, so long as it's cogent. And I thought, well, not only is it a great subject, because it does give, not certainly compared to my day, most of RE in England, especially in non-faith schools, looks at and examines ethics, morals, ways of living, but without having to question them. Sort of you look at the different faith groups. And I thought, well, you want to promote non-religious worldviews. What have you got? You've only got humanism. Wouldn't veganism be a wonderful example of a secular worldview, but which is not just secular? And that's the wonderful thing about it. It can also be held as as part of a religious worldview. So thankfully, I approached RE Today, which is like the leading provider of resources. And I thought they're not going to go for this, because I'd knocked on lots of doors and said, could you commission, can I do some resources? And thankfully, Angela Hill was there. And it just takes the right person, doesn't it?
Yes.
And voila. I joined together with the Animal Interfaith Alliance. That's another brilliant organization advocating for animals, and together we work on outreach with the materials. And I think one of the best things is in England is this National Association of Teachers of RE. They have a spirited arts competition, and it can be drawing, it's really good, poetry, drama, music, whatever you can think of, any art form, any art medium. And we sponsor an animal theme. And so we've been running it for 3 years, and it's international. So we get, from all over the world, obviously international, all these wonderful artworks together with narratives. I mean, the narrative is as important as the artwork. And that's been a great way of including animals the morals, looking children to consider the moral status of animals, and they're already there. You look at some of their work and you think they have a lot to teach us. It's not a one-way street. Their awareness, sometimes their compassion can, be amazing, absolutely amazing. Yeah.
And so when you were talking about the schools and their curriculum, so they're really, what they're doing is humane washing, greenwashing. They're just making everything seem like it's all beautiful, but it's not. And as you said, it impacts environmental, health, and social issues as well. And the kids, I really think that it is an atrocity that they would put kids through this, because kids, when they first look at an animal, they look at a pig or a chicken and an apple. They don't go, oh, let me have a bite of this chicken, or let me have a bite of this pig, right? They'll grab the apple. So they already know in their hearts that that's not the natural way, right? So then they get, like you said, pushed into these educational sort of programs that tell them otherwise. So you start taking away their empathy. I mean, I think it's so wrong to have anyone raise an animal, right? And care for it. And then at the end of it, it says, okay, now we could kill it. I think that promotes violence. And I think that it's a disconnect.
This is the thing. I mean, like I didn't want to do this work. It wasn't, obviously, but it was the need for it. So when I was looking initially, and I think it was around about 2018, 19, at like, this isn't good. I would want children to have better opportunities than I did in looking at this, because I've met a lot of people who've said, feel they've wasted their years, or want to apologize to the animals for not realizing sooner. And I'm one of those. And
me too.
And I could just see that what's out there. So I actually looked and I thought, is there anybody doing anything? Oh, RSPCA, they do the compassionate classroom. I thought, I don't need to do this. I don't need, the RSPCA, maybe I can go and help them. Maybe I can join forces with them to help create, give money, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then to my horror, because obviously RSPCA, I don't know if it is the Royal Society for the Protection of Cruelty Towards Animals. It's like one of our longest established animal rescue. So dogs, cats, and has been at the forefront of animal welfare, including farm animal welfare. So, as such, Royal Assent, it's our biggest organisation for promoting welfare of animals against cruelty. And I looked at their programme for primary schools, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, dogs, cats. And then it came to farmed animals. And if you want to be kind to a farm animal, you buy RSPCA farm assured products. And I thought, what? They even state that in their learning materials, they don't mention vegetarianism or veganism or being compassionate or farm sanctuaries, because the dominant worldview is eating. So we'll look at welfare. And of course, they get money from the branding. And I thought, oh, all is lost. I mean, actually, that lit me a fire, because I think if they're so trusted as an organisation, they are the compassionate. I mean, it's called the compassionate classroom. And I have spoken with them and I talked about it, because they were talking about, well, we want to stop. How do we want to not look at adopting animals, but let's stop the cruelty in the first place. And I'm thinking, well, why do you do that with that disjointed love the dog, but eat the pig? And they actually had a video talking about friendship, and it was a farmer with his pigs and how we can relate that to our own human friendships. And I'm thinking, the farmer with the pigs, I mean, if it was a sanctuary, I get it. And it was an idealized, 6 pigs, not 30,000.
Right.
Let's say the majority of our farms, even in the UK now, are industrial style farming. So this even now, all of the storybooks, the idea that children have, if you ask them, draw a farm, which I do we're just working on some resources at the moment. There's the cockerel on the gate and there's a pig, one chicken, one this, and you're sort of thinking they're doing a great job at keeping that illusion of the family farm.
Humane washing.
Yeah, humane washing is the main thing, and there isn't humane way to kill. And obviously, I'm all for, and I support, and I will include, as I'm doing at the moment. I'm working on some resources. I think it's important to be objective and pluralistic. So, and also I know the audience. So, but I'm looking at some resources at the moment where we look at industrial farming. We look at, so for biology, sciences, geography, industrial farming on animals, on crops, the use of pesticides. But what's always missing in the organic or the regenerative or the nature friendly is actually where you don't use animals. You don't need them. Even in the regenerative models, children are being educated, not that they actually get to quite often look at food systems. In schools, I'm finding more often than not that if, climate, nature, environmental studies comes up, it's teaching the children about plastics, putting your rubbish away, on fossil fuels. But like the COPs, meetings, everything else, the actual animal agriculture is missing.
Right.
And one of the biggest things for our CO2 methane health is how our food systems. So for empathy, education on food systems, what is missing is the option of growing veganically. So like I've partnered with an organization called the Vegan Organic Network, and we started the Growing Nature Academy to bring vegan values and growing practices into schools. It's safer, so they're not handling manure or any chemicals or any animal fertilizers like fish bone, all the rest of it. So it's a safer way to grow, a more wholesome way to grow, and more eco-friendly and compassionate way to grow. So there's much to be done, and I think there's room for it, to bring it into the spectrum of choices. That's what all I'm trying to do. We can talk about all the others. We have to, the different types of farming, but we need to look at farming without animals or animal byproducts. Yeah.
So how do you envision Vine influencing future generations and broader social change?
I think it's planting seeds. I'm mindful that children don't have the economic power, and I don't want them to be conflicted that all of a sudden they go home and be traumatized. So there's no imagery, or it will be age appropriate. It's planting the seed of choice, to be conscious, to be aware of the choices. Where they go with that is totally up to them. But if it's not even within their scope for thinking, for ethical decision making, if it's not there, then, with social media and everything, and I think children are aware of a lot more things than in my day. There's access to things, but still, to do it within a safe setting like a school, to be able to discuss concerns. And it's not like with veganism to make them vegan or even to be perfect, because quite often for anybody it's a journey. It might be something that they even think about when all of a sudden they'll see something and they'll think, I remember at school we did that.
Right.
Maybe because that's maybe what happened to me. The people that I met in my life, like my neighbor Pat, when she did me a vegan meal, and I went home and I complained because there wasn't a ham sandwich. Yeah.
I did the same thing with my
invite people around, why don't you?
I did
so, I've worn those shoes.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
did the same. My friend would say, "Hey, let's have lunch. I'll bring the food," and I'd be like, "I'm not a rabbit. I'll bring my food. You bring your own food. I'm not interested. I got canines, of course. You know, canines, real
yeah,
canines are wouldn't fit in
yeah,
my mouth, and stuff like that." I think that we are really, well, we know we're harming the planet. We're killing animals. We're killing ourselves because these animals that we are ingesting as so-called food for our health are bringing forth the diseases that people are
mm,
getting, and more often. I just saw in an article not too long ago that younger people are now getting cancer earlier in life than generations before, and it all has to do with the animals, and like big pharma and the animal industry and the dairy industry. They're all interested in money. Like you said, you
mm,
had a farmer saying, "Oh, how kind he was with his little pigs," right? Meanwhile, he's kind for a moment for a photo shoot, and then he takes them in the back in the
yeah,
barn and he kills them.
yeah.
So really, you're nice to your animals, or the farmers who say they love their animals, and there comes some sort of catastrophe, a flood or whatever, and then they leave their animals tied up or whatever to die in horrendous situations, but they love their animals.
They do. And I must admit, sometimes, and I've met some farmers and I've talked to them, and in a strange way, and they'll get very protective, that we care for about our animals, we love them and the welfare of them. And I think that they
Money.
haven't got the cognitive dissonance, that they feel they can love. And when it goes to market, well, they themselves have been socialized out of that empathy. And I think the fact that they care for them, it's like with teachers. I don't think people sometimes deliberately do this or mindfully do this. It's what it's what your culture has taught you, has socialized into you. But you get many farmers, like we've got some here, that are starting to transition. And I think there's a movement in America where one day they say, I can't do it anymore. I can't see them loaded, that I've cared for and loved. And they have connected with them, see them going off to market. So they've transitioned or looking for that. And that's where we need government support. Because I think it, it's not that they love them so much that they don't want to stop farming. It's a livelihood. And if
Right.
there was alternatives and funding
And there is.
to transition,
And I know that here in the US, there's a organization, Transformation, that helps farmers, get out of the slaughter, the raising animals for slaughter industry, and helps them be able to make a living doing something else. There are
yeah,
people who've done soy or almond or whatever, but mushrooms, whatever, but they help them transition to something that is not cruel. And I think that is where, as you said, the government should step in and help these programs, because it benefits not only the planet, it benefits our health and the animals, and of course it helps the individuals, the farmers, to get out of this business that they may not want to be in anymore.
yeah, oh, absolutely. It just makes sense. It's it's like the abolitionist movement. Eventually, it was pressured, but they were compensated. So, I mean, I'm not saying it was the solution, but in the end, in the dismantling um, of the system, there was compensation, there was alternatives. In fact, people are still getting paid compensation for giving up their um, slave practices. So, and I think as time goes on, I'm hoping that there'll be more and more organizations um, bringing this. I mean, America with the humane education, I think, is a great program. And in some states, it's actually advocated that you should have a humane education. But then quite often that humane education model stops at animal welfare. never includes animal rights. And for me, any education has to include welfare and rights. Otherwise, you just perpetuate the system.
Correct. We need to
So
make sure that laws change, and uh, all that. All that also has to go into the system. Otherwise, as you say, it's just talk and nothing else. We're coming to the end of our interview, so leave us with some last words, and Vine, where people can connect with you. And I will have your website on this at the production end of this, so that if people want to get in touch with you or want to use some of your curriculum for their classes, that they can do so.
yeah. Well, the RE resources are freely available and can be used anywhere. There's all the units from the age of 5 up to 18. We're going to be obviously loading more resources on there. But please, if there's any teachers or parents, look at the competition. Anyone, from any school can apply. And so if you look at the website, I'm going to shortly be advertising the animal theme for 2026. So it's not quite ready yet, but that will be on there. And the competition ends in July of next year. So there's time yet. So have a look in the new year.
And it's throughout the world.
Other organizations.
Yeah, and it's
throughout the world,
so
anywhere.
Anybody can
and anyone can do that, and even write in any language. And we've also, there's other great organizations like the Ministry of Eco Education. They've got a great website to look at ideas about environment, nature, to incorporate that into your lesson plans. And ProVeg do a fantastic school plates. So if you're looking to go into your school and to find ways to, either as a teacher or a parent or a pupil, encourage the school to look at other ways of teaching, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you,
and just working together to make change. We need to work together.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Michelle, for being on the Vegan Pulse. I appreciate you and what you do. And I encourage people to join that competition and to try to get this curriculum into every school.
Yeah. Let's have veganism included in every school. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.